Right now, without you doing anything, your heart is beating. Your lungs are pulling in air. Your immune system is silently destroying things you will never even know entered your body. And your brain is processing every word on this screen, while also running about 1,000 background processes you are completely unaware of. You have been carrying the most sophisticated machine ever built for your entire life, and almost nobody actually understands how it works. Today, that changes. We are going to go through every major system in your body, what it does, how it actually does it, and most importantly, why it matters to you personally. Not in textbook language, just the real stuff, explained like a normal person would explain it. And before we jump in, I want to give you one concept to hold on to the whole time, one idea that makes everything else click faster. Your body is not a collection of separate parts that happen to share the same skin. It is one system. Every organ, every nerve, every tiny cell is in constant conversation with everything else. When one thing changes, everything else adjusts. That idea that your body is one deeply connected team is going to come up again and again, and by the end of this video, you are going to see it everywhere. There is also something in this video I have not seen anyone else talk about, a moment halfway through where you realize that the most important system in your body is one almost nobody ever thinks about. It is not your heart, it is not your brain, and by the time we get there, I think it's going to genuinely surprise you. Let's start at the top. Let's start with control. Because before your body can do anything at all, move, digest food, fight off a virus, grow taller, feel happy, something has to be in charge. And your body has two separate systems handling control. They work in completely different ways, and they are both running right now as you read this. The first one is your nervous system. Think of it as your body's fastest communication line. When you touch something hot, the signal from your finger reaches your brain and comes back in less than a second. When you decide to stand up, your brain sends a message to your legs almost instantly. Fast, precise, direct. Here is the best way to picture your nervous system. Imagine your body is a massive city. The brain is City Hall, where all major decisions happen. The spinal cord is the main highway running through the center of town, and the peripheral nerves are every single road, alley, and footpath branching out from that highway into every neighborhood, every building, every room. Every signal travels this road network, some signals going into City Hall with information, some going out with instructions. The city never sleeps, the roads never close, and every second, millions of messages are in transit simultaneously. Your brain has three main parts. The cerebrum is the big, wrinkled outer part you picture when you hear the word brain. It handles thinking, decisions, language, memory, emotions, everything conscious. Reading these words right now, forming opinions about them, remembering something from yesterday, that is all cerebrum. The cerebellum sits at the back and bottom. It handles coordination and balance. Every time you walk, pick up a glass, or catch something thrown at you, the cerebellum is working in the background, making sure your movements are smooth. If the cerebellum gets damaged, a person can know exactly what they want to do, the idea is clear in their head, but their body just cannot carry it out smoothly. It's like having perfect instructions but a broken printer. Then there's the brainstem, connecting the brain to the spinal cord. This is the oldest, most essential part. It controls breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and swallowing, all without you ever asking it to. Your brainstem is running those processes right now in the background and has been every moment since you were born. Now, the actual cells doing all this work are called neurons. These are unlike any other cell in your body. For one thing, they can be enormous. A single neuron can stretch over 1 meter from the base of your spine down to your toes. One cell, over 3 feet long. Each neuron has a cell body with the nucleus, dendrites sticking out like branches that receive incoming signals, and a long cable called an axon that carries the outgoing signal to the next neuron or to a muscle. The gap between one neuron and the next is called a synapse. When a signal reaches the end of one neuron, it releases chemicals called neurotransmitters into that gap. Those chemicals cross the gap and trigger the next neuron. Different neurotransmitters do very different things. Glutamate tends to excite and activate, GABA tends to calm things down, dopamine and serotonin affect mood, motivation, and how you feel pleasure. The balance between all these chemicals shapes how you feel, how you think, and how you react to everything. One of the most interesting things about your nervous system is how it handles emergencies. Reflexes, like when a doctor taps your knee and your leg kicks, don't actually involve your brain at all. The signal from your knee goes into your spinal cord, and the response shoots back to your leg without ever making the trip up to your brain. Your brain finds out about it after the fact. The whole reason for this is speed. In a real emergency, waiting for your brain to process everything and send a reply would take too long. So your spinal cord handles certain responses instantly on its own. The peripheral nervous system, all the nerves outside the brain and spinal cord, splits into two parts. The somatic system controls things you choose to do, moving your arm, speaking, walking. The autonomic system runs everything you do not consciously control: your heartbeat, digestion, breathing rate, pupil size. You can't decide to stop your heart or slow your digestion. The autonomic system owns those processes, and it won't hand them over. There's also a category of neurons worth understanding because it gets talked about a lot, but rarely explained clearly. And those are the neurons involved in pain. Pain is not a signal that travels from an injury site to your brain like a phone call. It's more like an interpretation. Special neurons called nociceptors detect tissue damage or potential damage and send signals towards your spinal cord and brain. But whether those signals become the experience of pain and how intense that pain feels depends on a huge range of other factors. Emotional state, past experiences, expectations, attention, and context all shape how your brain processes those signals and whether it decides to generate pain. This is why the same injury can feel devastating in one situation and barely noticeable in another. A soldier wounded in combat might not feel significant pain until hours later when the immediate survival pressure is gone. A person who is anxious about a medical procedure might feel more pain from a needle than someone who is calm. Pain is not just reporting damage, it's your brain's calculated decision about whether you need to stop what you are doing and pay attention to your body. Understanding this has completely changed how modern medicine approaches chronic pain. The nervous system also does something called neuroplasticity. It physically changes based on your experiences and what you repeatedly do. Connections between neurons that get used frequently become stronger and more efficient. Connections that go unused weaken and can disappear. When you learn a new skill, playing an instrument, learning a language, practicing a sport, your brain is literally rewiring itself. New synapses form, existing ones strengthen. The myelin sheath around frequently used axons thicken, making signal transmission faster. The brain you have today is not the same physical structure as the brain you had 5 years ago. Every experience changes it. Every repeated thought or behavior reshapes it. This is one of the most profound and hopeful discoveries in all of neuroscience. Your brain is not fixed. It is always being written. Here's something we haven't talked about yet. There's a part of your nervous system that almost no one knows about, sometimes called the second brain. It has its own network of neurons, it makes decisions independently of your actual brain, and scientists now believe it influences not just digestion, but your mood and mental health. We're going to get to it when we cover the digestive system, and once you hear what it does, you'll never think about gut feelings the same way again.
Now for the second control system. If the nervous system is your fastest communication line, instant signals to specific destinations, the endocrine system works completely differently. It releases chemicals called hormones into your bloodstream, and those hormones drift through your entire body, reaching every tissue, delivering messages that can take hours or even days to fully play out. Slower, more widespread, but in many ways more powerful. The master controller of the whole system is a small structure in the middle of your brain called the hypothalamus. It is constantly monitoring your body: temperature, blood sugar, stress levels, hydration. When something is off, it acts. Just below it hangs the pituitary gland, sometimes called the master gland because it sends hormonal orders to almost every other endocrine gland in your body. Think of the hypothalamus as the president and the pituitary as the general. The general sends commands to the troops, but the president is the one deciding what those commands are. Your thyroid gland sits in your neck and mainly controls your metabolism, how fast your cells convert nutrients into energy. When it is running too slowly, everything feels slow. You are tired all the time. You gain weight easily. You feel foggy. When it runs too fast, your heart races, you feel anxious and shaky, you cannot gain weight no matter what you eat. One small gland, enormous influence over how you feel every day. Behind the thyroid are 4 tiny structures called parathyroid glands. Their one specific job is managing calcium levels in your blood, and this matters way more than most people realize. Calcium is not just for bones. Your heart needs calcium to beat. Your muscles need it to contract. Your nerves need it to send signals. If your blood calcium drops or rises even slightly outside the normal range, serious problems follow. Your parathyroid glands are managing this balance right now, completely silently, with a precision that no machine we have ever built can match. In the early 1900s, surgeons doing thyroid operations sometimes accidentally removed the parathyroid glands too. They are tiny and easy to miss. The patients would seem fine after surgery. Then within a day or two, they would start having muscle spasms, then seizures. Then their hearts would go into dangerous rhythms. Doctors were baffled for years. They were seeing patients die or become seriously ill after what looked like a successful operation. It was not until scientists finally understood that calcium regulation depended on these 4 almost invisible structures, each one roughly the size of a grain of rice, that they realized what was happening. 4 grains of rice were the difference between life and death. That's how critical calcium regulation is and how remarkably compact and efficient the system managing it is. The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. These produce adrenaline, the rush you feel when you're scared, excited, or about to do something difficult. Your heart speeds up, your muscles get more blood, your pupils dilate, everything sharpens. Your body is shifting resources to deal with an immediate challenge. But the adrenal glands also produce cortisol, a stress hormone that, at the right level, helps you stay alert and focused. At chronically high levels from constant stress, it starts suppressing your immune system, disrupting your sleep, and damaging your cardiovascular system. Your stress response was designed for short bursts, not a permanent setting. Your pancreas does double duty. It produces digestive enzymes, but it is also an endocrine gland, producing insulin and glucagon to control your blood sugar. After you eat, blood sugar rises and the pancreas releases insulin, which tells your cells to absorb glucose and tells your liver to store the excess as glycogen. When blood sugar drops, glucagon tells the liver to break that stored glycogen back down and release it. This balancing act happens continuously. Every meal you eat triggers it. Every hour you go without food triggers it. It never stops. There's something worth sitting with about how hormones work. Unlike a nerve signal which hits a specific target in milliseconds and is done, a hormone enters your entire bloodstream and drifts to every tissue in your body. But only cells with the right receptor, like a lock that fits a specific key, will respond to it. A cell without the receptor for a hormone is completely unaffected by it, even if the hormone is flowing right past it in enormous quantities. This receptor-based targeting is what allows the same hormone to do very different things in different tissues. Testosterone, for example, triggers muscle cells to build more protein, signals hair follicles in certain areas to produce different types of hair, affects bone density, and influences mood and cognition, all from one hormone targeting different receptors in different cell types, each responding in its own specific way. Hormones can also interact with each other in complex ways. Estrogen can increase the sensitivity of certain cells to other hormones. Cortisol can suppress the immune system's response to signals from other hormones. Thyroid hormone affects how sensitively your cells respond to adrenaline. The endocrine system is not a collection of independent glands, each doing their own thing. It's a web of interacting signals where everything affects everything else. This is partly why hormonal disorders are often so difficult to diagnose and treat. Change one variable and you change dozens of downstream effects. The body is not linear. It's a system of loops and feedbacks, and the endocrine system might be the most interconnected loop of all. One hormonal effect that touches almost everyone is what happens during puberty. The hypothalamus gradually increases its output of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which signals the pituitary to release hormones that stimulate the gonads, the testes in males, the ovaries in females, though everyone produces some of both. These hormones then drive the physical changes of puberty, growth spurts, changes in body composition, the development of secondary sex characteristics, and significant shifts in brain chemistry that are responsible for much of the emotional intensity that comes with adolescence. The teenage brain isn't broken. It's in the middle of the most dramatic hormonal and neurological reorganization it will experience since infancy. We just talked about insulin, and most people know it from the context of diabetes. But there's a newer area of research suggesting that insulin resistance, the root cause of type 2 diabetes, might also be involved in Alzheimer's disease. Some researchers have started calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. The connection between your blood sugar regulation and your brain health is one of the most fascinating areas in medicine right now, and we'll touch on why when we get to the section on the brain and memory later in this video.
You learned there are 5 senses in school. That number is not exactly wrong, but it is not complete. Neurologists generally agree humans have at least 7, and depending on how you define a sense, possibly more. The 5-sense version just happens to be the one that fit nicely on a poster. Let's talk about what is actually happening when you perceive the world. Let's start with the one most people think they understand, but mostly do not. Taste. Here is the real number. About 80 to 90% of what you think is the taste of food is actually smell, not taste, smell. Your taste buds can only detect 5 basic categories: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, the savory, meaty depth you get from mushrooms or aged cheese. Everything else, every nuance, every complexity, every time you say, "This tastes like home," that is coming from your nose. The proof is simple. When your nose is completely blocked, a bad cold, or try holding your nose right now, food becomes almost tasteless. The taste buds are fully functional, they are doing their job, but without smell, the whole experience collapses. This is not a bug, it is how the system was designed. Taste and smell are deeply linked in your brain, and your brain constructs what you experience as flavor by combining both signals together. Your tongue is covered in bumps called papillae. The mushroom-shaped ones scattered across the surface contain taste buds and are sensitive to all 5 basic tastes. At the very back, a curved row of larger, circular papillae sits just before your throat. These are involved in triggering the gag reflex if you eat something potentially dangerous. That gag reflex has saved your life more times than you know. Now, smell. In the roof of your nasal cavity, there is a small patch of specialized tissue containing about 40 million olfactory receptor neurons. These cells are specifically designed to detect airborne molecules. When a molecule hits one of these cells, it triggers a signal that travels through your olfactory nerve directly to your brain. And specifically, it connects directly to the parts of your brain that handle memory and emotion. This is why a specific smell can drop you instantly into a memory from years ago with the full emotional weight of that moment, in a way that a photo or a song rarely manages to match. The wiring is just more direct. These receptor neurons are replaced roughly every 40 days by new cells grown from stem cells. This is one of the very few places in your entire body where new neurons are regularly produced in adulthood. Scientists studying whether we could trigger similar regeneration in damaged spinal cords or injured brains have been closely studying the nose as a model. Vision.
Your eye is roughly the size of a ping pong ball. Light enters through the cornea, the transparent curved surface at the front, which does most of the actual focusing work. Then it passes through the pupil, which is just a hole in your iris. Your iris is a muscle. It contracts or expands based on light levels to control how much enters. Behind the pupil is your lens, which fine-tunes the focus by changing shape, pulled tighter for close objects, stretched flatter for distant ones. The muscles doing this are called ciliary muscles, and they weaken with age, which is why many people eventually need reading glasses. At the back of your eye is the retina, the actual sensing surface. It is lined with two types of photoreceptors. Rods are sensitive in low light but cannot detect color. Cones handle color and fine detail in brighter conditions, and they're mostly concentrated in a central spot called the fovea, the point of sharpest vision that you use to look directly at something. Your peripheral vision is mostly rods, which is why you can detect movement in the corner of your eye in dim light, but you cannot make out colors or fine details there. There's a point on your retina where the optic nerve connects, and this spot has 0 photoreceptors, a genuine blind spot. Right now, there's a hole in your visual field, and you never notice it because your brain fills it in automatically based on surrounding information. Your visual experience is not a raw feed from your eyes. It's a heavily edited, constructed version that your brain is assembling in real time. Hearing. Sound is just vibration in air, pressure waves moving outward from a source. Your outer ear catches those waves and channels them down your ear canal to your eardrum. The eardrum vibrates. Those vibrations transfer through 3 tiny bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes, the 3 smallest bones in your entire body. The stapes, the smallest of the 3, presses against the oval window of your inner ear, transferring the vibration into fluid. Inside the cochlea, a coiled, fluid-filled structure in your inner ear, waves travel through the fluid and cause a membrane to vibrate. Different frequencies cause vibration at different points along this membrane. High pitch near the entrance, low pitch towards the far end. Hair cells sitting along this membrane are activated at their specific frequency location, convert the mechanical movement into electrical signals, and send those signals to your brain. Your brain then constructs the experience of sound from those signals. You never actually hear the sound waves, you hear your brain's interpretation of them. But your inner ear is doing something else at the same time. The semicircular canals, 3 fluid-filled loops oriented in 3 different directions, detect rotational movement. The vestibule detects linear movement and gravity. Together, these structures form your balance system, and they feed continuous information to your brain about exactly where your head is in space, which direction it just moved, and how fast. Combined with visual input and signals from muscles and joints, this is how you stay upright without thinking about it. Touch is the first sense to develop in the womb, before hearing, before vision, before anything else. Your skin has about 50 touch receptors per square centimeter. Different types detect different things. Pacinian corpuscles are the largest and detect strong pressure and fast vibration. They're designed for sudden changes. Constant, steady pressure causes them to go quiet. Meissner corpuscles sit just under the outer layer of skin and detect light touch. They're concentrated in your fingertips, lips, and palms, the areas that require the finest tactile discrimination. Free nerve endings are responsible for pain and temperature, distributed throughout the skin without any protective surrounding structure, making them highly sensitive. One more thing about touch that almost nobody knows. The density of touch receptors varies enormously across different parts of your body, and this variation is reflected in how much brain area is dedicated to processing each body part. There's a famous illustration in neuroscience called the cortical homunculus, a distorted human figure where body parts are drawn proportionally to how much brain space they get. Your hands and lips are enormous, your torso and back are tiny. Your fingertips have such a high density of receptors, and your brain dedicates so much processing to them that you can detect a groove just a few micrometers wide with your fingertip. That same groove, felt on your back, would be completely undetectable. Same stimulus, completely different experience, because the brain resource behind it is orders of magnitude different. Your balance is worth thinking about more carefully too. You feel like you can always tell which way is down and whether you're moving, but this sense is built from three separate inputs: your inner ear, your vision, and your proprioception, which is the sense of where your body parts are in space, fed by receptors in your muscles, tendons, and joints. Your brain takes all three and synthesizes a single sense of orientation and movement. When these three sources conflict, you experience dizziness or nausea. This is why reading in a moving car makes some people sick. Your inner ear is detecting movement, but your eyes, focused on the still book in your hands, are reporting no movement. The conflict between those inputs is interpreted by your brain as a potential sign of poisoning or illness, and nausea is the body's response to that threat, a cue to expel whatever you might have consumed. Your motion sickness is an ancient defense mechanism being triggered by something that simply did not exist when that mechanism evolved. Here's something worth sitting with. We just covered 5 senses, but there's a sense called interoception, your ability to feel what is happening inside your own body. Your heartbeat, hunger, thirst, the feeling that something is wrong before you can even name it. Research now shows that people vary enormously in how well they can detect their own internal signals, and this ability, or lack thereof, appears to be closely linked to mental health, emotional regulation, and even anxiety disorders. The more we understand interoception, the more we realize that your ability to hear your own body might be one of the most important skills you can develop. We'll come back to this.
Your heart has beaten over 100,000 times today. It will do this again tomorrow and the day after, and every day for your entire life without ever taking a break. Over an average lifetime, that adds up to around 3 billion beats. No machine humans have ever built comes close to that kind of reliability. A car engine lasts maybe a few thousand hours of use. Your heart is built to last 80 or 90 years of continuous operation. The heart is a hollow muscle about the size of your closed fist, sitting in the center of your chest just slightly to the left. It has 4 chambers. The right side receives low oxygen blood coming back from the body and pumps it to the lungs to pick up oxygen. The left side receives that freshly oxygenated blood from the lungs and pumps it out to the entire rest of the body. Both sides work simultaneously. Every beat is 2 pumps happening at once. What makes cardiac muscle unique is that it generates its own electrical signal. It does not wait for your brain to tell it to beat. A cluster of cells called the sinoatrial node fires a regular electrical impulse that spreads across the heart and triggers the coordinated contraction. Your nervous and endocrine systems can speed this up or slow it down. Stress and exercise increase your heart rate. Relaxation reduces it. But the heart itself is creating the rhythm. You cannot think it into stopping. You cannot think it into beating faster through pure will. It is the most independent organ in your body. Blood leaves your heart through arteries. These have thick, muscular walls that expand with each surge of blood. That expansion is your pulse. Arteries branch into smaller arterioles, and those open into capillaries, the smallest vessels, so narrow that red blood cells have to squeeze through single file. The walls of capillaries are just 1 cell thick. This thinness is the whole point. It allows oxygen and nutrients to pass out into surrounding tissue and carbon dioxide and waste to pass back in for removal. The total surface area of all your capillaries is roughly 6,300 square meters. No cell in your body is more than 50 micrometers away from one. After the capillaries, blood flows into venules and then into veins heading back toward the heart. Veins work under much lower pressure than arteries, so they have thinner walls. They also depend on your muscles to help push blood along. Every time a nearby muscle contracts, it squeezes surrounding veins and moves blood forward. Veins in your limbs have one-way valves to prevent backflow. When you sit still for hours on a long flight, those muscles are not contracting. Blood pools in your legs and your feet swell. Moving around even a little activates those muscle pumps and keeps everything flowing. There's also an aspect of circulation that has become increasingly important in medicine, and that is the lymphatic system, the body's parallel drainage network. Running alongside your blood vessels is a separate system of vessels that collect excess fluid that leaks out of capillaries into surrounding tissues. This fluid, now called lymph, travels through lymph vessels and passes through structures called lymph nodes, small bean-shaped clusters found throughout your body, especially in your neck, armpits, and groin. Lymph nodes are packed with immune cells that screen the fluid passing through them. If they detect pathogens or abnormal cells, they trigger an immune response. This is why your lymph nodes swell when you're fighting an infection. They're actively working, filling with immune activity. Eventually, the lymph fluid returns to the bloodstream. The lymphatic system also absorbs dietary fats from the small intestine, which enter the lymph as tiny droplets and eventually reach the blood. It's a quiet system, no pump, no pulse, but its failure causes serious problems. When lymph vessels are damaged or blocked, fluid builds up in tissues, causing swelling called lymphedema. It's a reminder that even the systems you never hear about are doing essential work every day. When I first learned that 70% of your total blood volume is sitting in your veins at any given moment, just waiting, held in reserve, it genuinely changed how I thought about circulation. I had always imagined blood as constantly rushing everywhere at full speed, but the system is much more measured than that. Most of your blood is just parked, available, ready. Your cardiovascular system is not running at maximum capacity all the time. It's conserving resources and distributing them based on demand, which means the times that you do demand more, exercise, stress, exertion, the system has real reserves to draw on. There's something almost philosophical about that. You are built with more capacity than you normally use. Blood itself is doing multiple jobs simultaneously. Red blood cells packed with hemoglobin protein carry oxygen. White blood cells patrol for threats. Platelets are ready to clump together and seal any breach in the vessel walls. Plasma, the liquid portion, carries nutrients absorbed from your digestive system, hormones produced by your endocrine glands, clotting factors, antibodies, and waste products being transported for removal. Your blood is not just a delivery truck. It's a delivery truck, a police car, an ambulance, and a waste management vehicle all in one stream. Here's something most people never consider. Your blood vessels are not just passive pipes. They actively respond to their environment. The inner lining of your blood vessels, the endothelium, produces chemicals that regulate everything from blood pressure to inflammation to how easily blood clots. When this lining gets damaged or dysfunctional from smoking, chronic inflammation, or poor diet, it stops producing the right signals, and this is now understood to be one of the earliest and most important steps in cardiovascular disease. The health of that single-cell thick lining might matter more to your heart health than almost anything else. We're going to come back to why your lifestyle choices matter so much at the cellular level. You breathe about 20,000 times a day. You almost never think about it, and that automatic quality is easy to take for granted until you experience a moment when breathing becomes difficult. Anyone who has had a severe asthma attack, been winded by a hard fall, or struggled through a serious chest illness knows in an instant what everyone who has never experienced it takes a lifetime to ignore. Breathing is the most fundamental thing your body does. Air enters through your nose, where it is immediately warmed, moistened, and filtered. Tiny hairs trap large particles. Mucus traps finer ones, and microscopic hair-like cilia sweep that mucus, along with everything trapped in it, back toward your throat to be swallowed and neutralized by stomach acid. Your nose is an air purifier, a humidifier, and a heater, all running simultaneously. Breathing through your mouth bypasses most of this processing, which is one reason chronic mouth breathing is associated with more frequent respiratory infections. Air travels down your trachea, held open by C-shaped rings of cartilage so it cannot collapse, and splits into two bronchi, one going into each lung. These keep branching into smaller tubes, getting progressively thinner, until the smallest branches open into tiny balloon-like sacs called alveoli. You have approximately 300 million of these in your lungs. Their walls are 1 cell thick. The capillaries surrounding them are also 1 cell thick. Oxygen in the air crosses just 2 layers of cells to get into your blood. Carbon dioxide in your blood crosses those same 2 layers to get out. This exchange happens with every breath, 24 hours a day, and the total surface area available for this exchange is roughly the size of half a tennis court, all folded up and tucked inside your chest. Your right lung has 3 sections and is slightly larger. Your left lung has 2 sections and has a small indentation called the cardiac notch to make room for your heart sitting just to the left. Each lung is surrounded by 2 layers of a smooth membrane called the pleura, with a thin film of fluid between them that reduces friction.
Because the lung is essentially suctioned against the chest wall by this fluid, when your chest expands, the lung expands with it, pulling air in. When your chest relaxes, the lung deflates, pushing air out. You are not inflating your lungs like balloons, you are expanding the space around them, and they fill passively. Beyond gas exchange, your respiratory system helps regulate your blood pH. Carbon dioxide in your blood forms carbonic acid. More CO2 means more acid, lower pH. Your breathing rate is partly controlled by sensors monitoring this pH level. When it drops too low, you breathe faster to blow off more CO2 and restore balance. This is why deep, slow breathing can calm your nervous system. You are actively changing your blood chemistry, and that chemical change feeds back into your brain and shifts your stress response. The mind-body connection, at its most literal, involves breathing. Surfactant is another thing worth knowing about, because it is one of those invisible heroes of your biology. The inner surfaces of your alveoli are coated with a film of liquid. Without surfactant, the surface tension of that liquid would cause the alveoli to collapse every time you exhaled, like a wet paper bag that sticks to itself when deflated. Surfactant is a substance produced by certain cells in the alveolar walls that reduces this surface tension, allowing the alveoli to stay open and re-expand easily with each breath. Premature babies often cannot produce enough surfactant yet, which is why premature birth can cause serious breathing problems and why one of the most critical early treatments for premature infants is synthetic surfactant delivered directly into their lungs. A molecule most people have never heard of is for a premature newborn the difference between breathing and not breathing. Your vocal cords deserve a mention here too. Sitting in your larynx, the voice box at the top of your airway, are two folds of mucous membrane stretched across the airway opening. When you breathe normally, these folds are apart and air passes freely. When you want to speak, muscles bring them together, and as air is forced through the narrow gap between them, they vibrate. The frequency of that vibration determines the pitch of the sound. You control pitch by adjusting the tension of the folds. Tighter tension produces higher frequencies, looser tension produces lower frequencies. The sound produced in the larynx is then shaped by your throat, mouth, lips, tongue, and nasal cavity into the specific sounds of speech. Every word you have ever said or will ever say is produced by this system. It is one of the most precisely controlled motor acts your body performs. There is a breathing technique that has been studied seriously in medical research as a way to influence your autonomic nervous system, specifically the balance between the fight or flight branch and the rest and digest branch. It has been used with veterans dealing with PTSD, with people managing anxiety disorders, and with elite athletes managing performance. The science of what happens in your body when you control your breathing deliberately and why it works is one of the most practical and underused tools in human biology. We won't go deep on it today, but consider that your next video might change how you breathe forever. Right now, your immune system is fighting things. Not maybe, not possibly. Right now, as you read this, immune cells are finding and destroying pathogens you do not know about and will never feel. Most of the battles your immune system fights, you experience as nothing at all. It is only when a threat overwhelms the early defenses that you start to feel sick. And by the time you feel sick, the full war has already been underway for a while. Your immune system works in two layers. The first layer is called innate immunity. It responds the same way to anything foreign, without needing to identify it specifically. Your skin is the first line. It physically keeps most things out. Your mucus traps particles. Your stomach acid destroys most pathogens that get swallowed. Tears in your eyes contain enzymes that break down bacterial cell walls. Before anything even reaches your actual immune cells, it has to get past all of these. When something does get through and starts causing damage, inflammation kicks in. Redness, swelling, heat, pain, these are not just annoying symptoms, they are a deliberate, controlled biological process. Blood vessels dilate to bring more immune cells to the area. Fluid leaks into the tissue. White blood cells called neutrophils arrive early and start engulfing and destroying bacteria, literally eating them. Your complement system, a cascade of about 20 proteins in your blood, activates in a chain reaction to punch holes in bacterial membranes, mark bacteria for destruction, and recruit more immune cells. all of this is happening automatically within minutes of an infection starting. The second layer is adaptive immunity, and this is where things get sophisticated. This system learns. It identifies specific pathogens, mounts a targeted response, and then keeps memory cells so that if the same pathogen ever shows up again, the response is dramatically faster and stronger, often strong enough to eliminate the threat before you ever feel sick. This is the principle that makes vaccines work. A vaccine gives your adaptive immune system the information it needs to build those memory cells without you having to go through the actual illness. Your immune system runs a training exercise instead of a real war. In the early days of organ transplantation, surgeons kept running into a strange problem. They could successfully transplant an organ from one person to another, technically perfect surgery, and within days or weeks, the patient's body would attack and destroy the new organ. The immune system was treating the transplanted tissue exactly like it treated bacteria or viruses, as foreign, as something that did not belong. The solution, immunosuppressant drugs that dialed down the adaptive immune system, worked, but came with a cost. Suppress the immune system to save the organ, and the patient becomes far more vulnerable to infections. Today, every person with a transplanted organ is on a careful, ongoing balancing act. Enough immune suppression to protect the organ, not so much that an ordinary infection becomes lethal. It's a daily negotiation that never ends for the rest of their life. And it shows, more vividly than almost anything else, how powerful and precise your immune system's ability to recognize self versus not self really is. Your adaptive immune system has B cells and T cells. B cells produce antibodies, proteins shaped specifically to bind to one particular pathogen. When an antibody locks onto a pathogen, it neutralizes it directly or marks it so that other immune cells come and destroy it. T cells attack infected cells in your own body. When a virus gets inside one of your cells and starts replicating, the infected cell displays fragments of the virus on its surface as a distress signal. T cells recognize those fragments and eliminate the infected cell before the virus can spread further. There's also an interesting category of immune cells called natural killer cells. These are part of your innate immune system but have a more targeted function. They patrol your body looking for cells that are either infected by a virus or have become cancerous. Normal, healthy cells display specific proteins on their surface that signal to the immune system, "I am one of yours, do not destroy me." Infected cells and cancerous cells often lose or change these surface proteins. They no longer display the right, "I belong here" signal. Natural killer cells notice this missing signal and destroy the cell. This is happening in your body right now, cells that have gone wrong being found and eliminated before they can cause problems. The most cancers that never develop into illness were probably destroyed by natural killer cells so efficiently that you never knew they started. The cancers that do develop are the ones that somehow evade or overwhelm this detection system, which is why a key area of modern cancer research is finding ways to help the immune system recognize and attack tumor cells that have learned to hide. Fever is also worth understanding properly. When your immune system detects an infection, certain immune cells release signaling molecules that travel to your brain's hypothalamus and raise its temperature set point. Your body then actively works to reach this new higher temperature. You shiver to generate heat. Your blood vessels constrict to retain it. A fever is not a malfunction or a sign that things are going wrong. It's a deliberate immune strategy. Higher temperatures make it harder for many pathogens to survive and reproduce. They also speed up certain immune cell functions. Your body is making itself deliberately hostile to the invader. The discomfort you feel during a fever is not incidental. It's a side effect of an active defense strategy. Mild to moderate fevers are generally beneficial, which is why automatically suppressing every fever with medication is a more complex question than it might seem. Your immune system is also closely tied to your gut, your sleep, and your stress levels in ways science is only beginning to fully map. We know that chronic poor sleep significantly impairs immune function. Even one night of bad sleep reduces certain immune cell activity measurably. We know that the bacteria living in your gut, your microbiome, actively train your immune system from birth and continue influencing it throughout your life. And we know that chronic stress keeps cortisol levels high, which directly suppresses immune function. The question of how to support your immune system isn't really about supplements and vitamins. It's about the fundamentals, and the fundamentals connect back to nearly every other system we've talked about.
This is the section I promised at the start, the system that most people never think about, but that some scientists now believe is as important as any other system in your body for your overall health, including your mental health. Let's start with what it does, then get to the part that nobody talks about in biology class. Your digestive system is essentially a long tube running from your mouth to your anus, over 30 feet if you stretched it out completely. Its job is to take the food you eat, break it down into the basic building blocks your cells can actually use, absorb those building blocks into your bloodstream, and eliminate the waste. Simple in concept, extraordinarily complex in execution. The process starts before you even take a bite. The sight or smell of food triggers your brain to send signals to your salivary glands, which start producing saliva. Your stomach begins producing acid. Your pancreas starts preparing digestive enzymes. Your body is getting a production line ready. By the time food reaches your mouth, multiple departments are already warmed up. In your stomach, powerful acid, hydrochloric acid, kills most bacteria in your food and starts breaking down proteins. The stomach walls churn everything into a liquid mush and then release it slowly in small amounts into the small intestine. The word small refers to its diameter, not its length. The small intestine is actually about 20 feet long. Its inner surface is covered in tiny finger-like projections called villi, and each of those is covered in even tinier microvilli. The total absorptive surface created by all of this folding is roughly the size of a studio apartment, all packed into a tube in your abdomen. Your liver produces bile, stored in the gallbladder, which gets released into the small intestine to emulsify fats, breaking them into tiny droplets that enzymes can access. Your pancreas releases a mix of enzymes that break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Amino acids from proteins, simple sugars from carbohydrates, fatty acids from fats, all of these pass through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream and lymphatic system, carried to every cell in your body. What remains moves into the large intestine, where water and some minerals are absorbed. Bacteria in your gut break down some remaining materials and produce vitamins, and the remainder gets compacted and eventually eliminated. Now here is the part that changes things. Lining the walls of your digestive tract, from your esophagus to your colon, is a vast network of about 100 million neurons. That is more neurons than your spinal cord contains. This network is called the enteric nervous system, and it can operate completely independently of your brain. It has its own sensory cells, its own processing capability, and its own reflexes. If you severed the connection between your gut and your brain entirely, your gut would keep working. This is why it is sometimes called the second brain. But the connection goes deeper than just independent function. Your gut communicates constantly with your actual brain, and about 90% of the signals traveling between them go from the gut up to the brain, not the other way around. Your gut is mostly talking to your brain, not the other way around, and what it is saying matters. The enteric nervous system produces about 95% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with mood, well-being, and emotional regulation. The trillions of bacteria in your gut, your microbiome, produce chemicals that pass into your blood and reach your brain. They influence inflammation, which affects brain function. They influence the production of neurotransmitters. The research is still developing, but the evidence is increasingly clear. The health of your gut is not separate from your mental health. They are the same conversation. The human microbiome, the ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms living in and on your body, outnumbers your own cells. You have about 37 trillion human cells, and roughly the same number, possibly more, of microbial cells. In some sense, you are as much microbial as you are human. And in the last 10 years, research has linked the composition of this microbiome to conditions ranging from obesity and diabetes to depression, autism, and Parkinson's disease. What you eat doesn't just fuel your body, It literally shapes the ecosystem inside you that is continuously communicating with your brain. This might be the most consequential thing you will hear in this entire video. Your skeleton is 206 bones, but they are not dead structures. Bones are living tissue, constantly being broken down and rebuilt, responding to the forces placed on them, storing minerals, and producing blood cells. Bone is hard because it is mineralized, primarily with calcium and phosphate, but it contains the protein collagen throughout, which gives it flexibility. Pure mineral would be brittle. Pure collagen would be soft. The combination of both is what makes bone tough enough to handle the stresses of daily life without fracturing with every step. Long bones have a dense outer shell of compact bone arranged in cylindrical units. At the center is a hollow filled with bone marrow. In children, mostly red marrow actively producing blood cells. In adults, much of this is replaced by yellow marrow, which is mostly fat. But even in adults, several bones maintain active red marrow: your ribs, vertebrae, pelvis, and the upper ends of your arm and thigh bones. Bone is maintained by three types of cells in constant balance. Osteoblasts build new bone, secreting a matrix that later gets mineralized. Once they are surrounded by their own matrix, they become osteocytes and switch to a maintenance role. Osteoclasts dissolve bone, releasing minerals into the blood when needed. Exercise, specifically weight-bearing exercise, signals osteoblasts to increase activity. Inactivity does the opposite. Your bones are literally shaped by how you use them. Your 640 or so skeletal muscles work by contracting, and the mechanism at the cellular level is one of the most elegant things in biology. Each muscle fiber contains thousands of units called sarcomeres. A sarcomere has two types of protein filaments, actin and myosin, interleaved like the fingers of two hands clasped together. When a nerve signal arrives, the myosin filaments grab onto the actin filaments and pull, causing them to slide past each other, shortening the sarcomere. When the signal stops, the fibers release and the muscle relaxes. That is the whole mechanism, a molecular pull and release happening billions of times a day throughout your body. Muscle fibers come in two main types. Slow-twitch fibers are rich in mitochondria and have a dense blood supply. They're built for endurance, they resist fatigue well, and are used for sustained low-intensity activities like walking, maintaining posture, and long-distance running. Fast-twitch fibers contract faster and produce more force, but they tire quickly. They're suited for short, intense efforts, sprinting, jumping heavy things. Most muscles have a mix of both types, and the ratio shifts somewhat with training. Exercise does not create new muscle fibers, it makes existing fibers larger. When you stress a muscle repeatedly, small amounts of damage occur in the fibers. Your body repairs them by adding extra protein, making the fibers thicker and stronger. This is hypertrophy. The process requires both the stress of training and adequate recovery time. The repair and adaptation happen mostly during rest and sleep, not during the workout itself. A workout without recovery is just damage without the benefit. There is a concept in bone biology called Wolff's Law, and it's one of those principles that sounds simple but has huge practical implications. Wolff's Law basically says that bone adapts to the loads placed on it. If you regularly put mechanical stress on a bone through weight-bearing exercise, through impact, through the pull of muscles against it, osteoblasts increase their activity and the bone gets denser and stronger in the exact areas being stressed. If you reduce the load through inactivity, bed rest, or zero gravity, osteoclasts dominate and the bone loses density. Astronauts on long missions lose significant bone density because in microgravity, their bones are never under the mechanical load that triggers bone building. They come back needing months of rehabilitation to restore what they lost in weeks. The same principle applies to everyone. Your skeleton is literally being shaped right now by what you do with it. Bone density peaks in your late 20s and early 30s. What you build before then, you draw on later in life. What you maintain through activity in adulthood slows the inevitable decline. Your skeleton is not a fixed structure. It is a responsive, living thing. Tendons and ligaments round out the picture of how your musculoskeletal system actually functions.
Tendons are the tough, rope-like structures that attach muscles to bones. When a muscle contracts, the tendon transmits that force to the bone, creating movement. Ligaments connect bones to other bones at joints, providing stability and limiting movement to safe ranges. Both are made primarily of collagen and are very strong but have relatively poor blood supply, which is why tendon and ligament injuries take so long to heal. There isn't much circulation bringing repair materials. A broken bone often heals faster than a torn ligament because the bone has a much richer blood supply. Tendons and ligaments also have elasticity. They can stretch slightly and spring back, storing energy and releasing energy. The Achilles tendon stores energy during the loading phase of each running stride and releases it in the push-off phase, making running significantly more efficient than it would be if you had to generate all the force fresh each step. There is a concept in exercise science called the minimum effective dose, the smallest amount of physical activity that produces meaningful health benefits. Research in the last decade has upended the idea that you need long, intense workouts to get results. Some studies suggest that as little as a few minutes of vigorous activity per day can significantly reduce all-cause mortality. The biology of why this works, what happens inside your muscles, your cardiovascular system, and your brain, even with brief exertion, is genuinely surprising and probably will change how you think about fitting movement into a busy day.
Most people think of skin as packaging, a surface, the thing that holds everything else in, but your skin is one of the most complex and multifunctional organs in your entire body. It is a barrier, a sensor, an immune organ, a temperature regulator, a vitamin factory, and an active communication interface with the outside world all at once. Your skin is your body's largest organ by surface area, about 1.5 to 2 square meters in the average adult, and accounts for roughly 15% of your body weight. A single square inch of skin contains about 650 sweat glands, 20 blood vessels, 60,000 melanocytes, and more than 1,000 nerve endings. It is dense with function. Skin has two main layers. The outer layer, the epidermis, is made primarily of cells called keratinocytes. New cells are continuously produced in the deepest layer and migrate upward as they mature, eventually flattening out, filling with a tough protein called keratin, and shedding off. The whole cycle takes about 30 days. The outer surface of your skin right now is cells that were produced a month ago and are about to be shed. This constant renewal is what keeps your skin barrier functional. Old, damaged cells are constantly replaced with fresh ones. Mixed into the epidermis are melanocytes, cells that produce melanin, the pigment responsible for skin color. Melanin absorbs UV radiation from sunlight, which is a good thing because UV damages DNA and can cause mutations that lead to cancer. Everyone's skin uses UV exposure to produce vitamin D, a process that cannot be replicated well by supplements alone and remains the primary source of vitamin D for most people who live in sunnier climates. Below the epidermis is the dermis, where most of the functional machinery lives. Blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, sweat glands, oil glands, and a network of collagen and elastin fibers that give skin its strength and flexibility. Collagen provides tensile strength. Elastin allows the skin to stretch and return. As you age, collagen production decreases and existing collagen becomes less organized. This is the structural cause of wrinkles. It is not the surface drying out, it is the scaffolding underneath losing its shape. Your sweat glands are critical for temperature regulation. When your core temperature rises, your hypothalamus sends signals to sweat glands to start producing sweat. When that sweat evaporates, it takes heat with it. This evaporative cooling is extremely effective, and it is one of the main reasons humans can perform sustained physical activity in heat far better than most other animals. We are not the fastest or the strongest, but we are exceptionally good at cooling ourselves while exerting, which allowed our ancestors to run prey to exhaustion over long distances, a hunting strategy called persistence hunting that is well documented in the archaeological record.
Your sweat glands, called sebaceous glands, produce sebum, an oily substance that lubricates and waterproofs your skin and hair, prevents drying and cracking, and has antibacterial properties. These glands are stimulated by androgens, which is why oil production increases at puberty. When oil glands become overactive and pores get blocked, you get acne, not because the skin is dirty, but because a hormonal shift has changed how much oil the glands are producing. The microbiome that lives on your skin is distinct from the one in your gut, and it plays a role that is only recently being understood. The bacteria on your skin are not just passive passengers, they actively compete with harmful pathogens, produce antimicrobial substances, and communicate with your skin's immune cells. The rise of certain skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis is now being linked not just to immune dysfunction, but to disruptions in the skin microbiome. Over-sanitizing, overuse of antibacterial products, and changes in the environment are all being investigated as possible factors. The idea that your skin needs to be completely sterile is increasingly looking like exactly the wrong approach.
Every other system we have talked about today exists to keep you alive. The reproductive system is unique. It exists to keep the species going, not you individually. You can live a perfectly healthy life without it ever producing anything. It is the only system in your body that is technically optional for your own survival, yet it drives some of the most powerful biological forces in human behavior. In males, sperm are produced in the testes, which sit outside the body in the scrotum. This is not an accident. Sperm production requires a temperature slightly below core body temperature. The scrotum can adjust its position relative to the body to fine-tune this temperature, pulling closer when cold, dropping away when warm. Sperm production begins at puberty and continues throughout life. After production, sperm mature in a tightly coiled structure called the epididymis, then wait. The entire journey from production to ejaculation takes about 64 to 74 days. In females, the ovaries are the primary reproductive organs. Unlike male sperm, which are produced continuously, women are born with all the eggs they will ever have. About 6 to 7 million eggs are formed during fetal development. By birth, this number has already fallen to about 1 million through a natural process of degeneration. By puberty, it is 400,000 to 500,000. Over an entire reproductive lifetime, only about 400 to 500 eggs will actually be released. The rest simply degenerate. The eggs present at birth are all a woman will ever have, and they age as she does, paused partway through cell division for decades, which is one reason age affects egg quality. The monthly cycle is driven by a precise hormonal sequence. The hypothalamus and pituitary signal the ovaries to develop a follicle containing an egg. Rising estrogen triggers the release of that egg at ovulation. After release, the follicle transforms into a structure that produces progesterone, preparing the uterine lining for potential implantation. If no pregnancy occurs, progesterone levels fall, the lining sheds, and the cycle resets. If an egg is fertilized and implants, progesterone rises to maintain the pregnancy, and the entire cycle is paused for the duration. Fertilization typically occurs in the fallopian tube, not the uterus. A fertilized egg then travels down the tube over several days, dividing as it goes, and implants into the uterine lining. The uterus is primarily muscle, and when the time comes for birth, those muscles contract with enough force to expel a baby. The cervix, which was closed and firm throughout pregnancy, gradually softens and opens. The whole process of labor is the coordinated action of uterine muscle and hormonal signals working in a feedback loop that intensifies until delivery. There is research showing that during pregnancy, fetal cells can pass through the placenta and enter the mother's bloodstream, and some of those cells can survive in her organs for decades after the pregnancy ends. This is called fetal microchimerism. It means that a mother can carry cells from her children in her brain, her heart, and her bones for the rest of her life.
What these cells do there, whether they repair tissue, whether they interact with the immune system, what their presence means is still being actively studied. It is one of the most quietly extraordinary facts in all of biology. We have covered a lot of ground. Let's pull back and look at the full picture, because the most important thing about your body is not any individual system. It is the conversation between all of them. Biologists call this homeostasis, the maintenance of a stable internal environment despite everything changing around you. Your body monitors hundreds of variables: temperature, pH, blood sugar, blood pressure, oxygen levels, hormone concentrations, and constantly adjusts to keep all of them within safe ranges. The adjustments happen automatically through feedback loops that loop through multiple systems simultaneously. Temperature regulation alone involves your cardiovascular system dilating or constricting blood vessels near the skin, your sweat glands increasing or reducing output, your muscles shivering to generate heat, your respiratory system adjusting breathing rate, and your hypothalamus orchestrating all of it. One challenge: 6 systems responding in a coordinated way. Calcium regulation pulls in your endocrine system, your kidneys, your bones, and your intestines. Blood sugar management involves your pancreas, liver, muscles, nervous system, and every cell in your body. Even something as simple as standing up from a seated position triggers a cascade. Blood pressure momentarily drops as gravity pulls blood toward your legs. Baroreceptors in your blood vessels detect this, signal your heart to beat faster and your vessels to constrict, and your pressure stabilizes, all in the span of a few seconds, without you being aware of any of it. This is why single-system thinking about health is always incomplete. Diabetes is not just a pancreas problem. It affects blood vessels, kidneys, nerves, eyes, and the immune system's ability to heal wounds. Depression is not just a brain chemistry problem. It involves the gut microbiome, inflammation pathways, sleep quality, and the cardiovascular system. Chronic stress is not just a mental experience. It physically alters your immune function, your gut health, your bone density, and your heart disease risk. The choices that matter most for your health are not targeted interventions for individual systems. They're the ones that support all the systems at once. Sleep, movement, nutrition, stress management, social connection. These things are powerful because they fix one thing, but because they move all the systems in the same better direction simultaneously. Sleep is perhaps the most powerful example of multi-system integration in your body, and it is deeply underappreciated. During sleep, your brain runs a cleaning process. The glymphatic system, which is essentially your brain's waste removal system, becomes dramatically more active. Cerebrospinal fluid pulses through channels in the brain, flushing out metabolic waste products, including beta amyloid, the protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. This cleaning only happens properly during sleep. Your immune system produces key cytokines, signaling molecules critical for immune response, primarily during sleep. Your body releases growth hormone during deep sleep, triggering repair and tissue regeneration. Your brain consolidates memories during sleep, transferring information from short-term to long-term storage. Your cardiovascular system gets a period of lower demand that is important for long-term heart health. Every single system in your body uses sleep for essential maintenance that cannot fully happen while you're awake. Sleep is not downtime. It is the most productive biological state your body enters. The concept of inflammation also ties everything together in a way that modern medicine is only beginning to fully appreciate. Acute inflammation, the redness and swelling around a cut, is a healing process. But chronic low-grade inflammation, which can simmer quietly for years without obvious symptoms, is now understood to be the central driver of most major chronic diseases: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, certain cancers, depression. The immune system in chronic stress or poor metabolic health never fully quiets down. It stays slightly activated, releasing low levels of inflammatory signals continuously. Over years, this damages blood vessels, disrupts insulin signaling, harms brain tissue, and promotes abnormal cell growth. The question, what causes chronic inflammation, turns out to be almost the same question as what causes modern chronic disease, and the answers keep pointing back to the same factors: poor sleep, poor diet, chronic stress, inactivity, and disruption of the gut microbiome. Your body is also doing something remarkable with water, one of the most tightly regulated substances in your entire physiology. Too much water in your blood and cells can swell and burst. Too little and cells shrink and malfunction. Your kidneys, two fist-sized organs sitting at the back of your abdomen, filter your entire blood volume roughly every 30 minutes. They adjust the concentration of your urine constantly based on your hydration status, your blood pressure, the concentration of various minerals in your blood, and hormonal signals from the adrenal glands and the pituitary. On a hot day when you're sweating heavily, your kidneys produce small amounts of very concentrated urine to conserve water. On a day when you drink a lot, they produce large amounts of dilute urine to get rid of the excess. They make this adjustment continuously, automatically, with a precision that no dialysis machine can fully replicate. Kidney failure is life-threatening not because the kidneys are involved in one thing, but because water balance, blood pressure, waste removal, mineral regulation, and pH control all depend on them simultaneously.
Your heart has beaten over 100,000 times today. Your immune system has silently handled threats you will never know about. Your gut has been talking to your brain all day. Your skin has been defending you, sensing the world and regulating your temperature. Your neurons have been processing information at speeds that no computer we have built can match. Your hormones have been orchestrating processes in every organ in your body. All of this simultaneously, all day, every day, without you having to ask. You are not a brain piloting a body. You are a body, one deeply interconnected biological system that includes a brain that has evolved over hundreds of millions of years into something so sophisticated that we still do not fully understand it, despite everything modern science has revealed. Think about what we covered today and what it actually means for your daily life. Every time you eat a meal, you are not just filling a tank. You are feeding 40 million olfactory neurons, fueling billions of immune cells, shaping the microbiome that talks to your brain, supplying the raw materials your osteoblasts need to maintain your skeleton, and providing the glucose and fatty acids your neurons need to generate the signals that make every thought and feeling possible. Food is information. Food is material. Food is the physical stuff that your body literally builds itself from and runs itself on. The downstream effects of what you eat touch every system in this video. And every time you move, even something as small as a 10-minute walk, you are not just burning calories. You are triggering the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports the growth of new neurons and the strengthening of existing connections. You are stimulating your bones to maintain density. You are working the muscle pumps that keep your lymphatic and venous circulation flowing. You are improving insulin sensitivity in your cells. You are activating the enteric nervous system in ways that support gut health. You are giving your cardiovascular system the regular training stimulus it needs to stay efficient. Movement is not a separate health category from nutrition or sleep or stress management. It is another input into the same one interconnected system. It all overlaps. It all feeds back on itself. There is also something genuinely worth sitting with about the sheer improbability of all of this working. Your cardiovascular system has to maintain the right pressure. Too high damages blood vessels and kidneys. Too low means organs do not get enough blood. Your blood pH has to stay within a razor-thin range of 7.35 to 7.45. Even a shift of 0.2 in either direction causes serious symptoms, and a shift of 0.4 is fatal. Your core temperature has to stay within a few degrees. Your blood glucose has to stay within a specific range. Your blood calcium, sodium, potassium, all of these have narrow ranges outside of which things start failing. And your body is maintaining all of these simultaneously in the face of constantly changing inputs: meals, exercise, temperature changes, emotional stress, illness, injury, adjusting hundreds of variables in real time to keep everything within the right ranges. Not occasionally, not when it feels like it, every second of your entire life. That this works at all is remarkable. That it works this reliably is extraordinary. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. Most people think about their health in terms of what they can add, what supplement, what treatment, what intervention. But what we covered today suggests a different way of thinking. Your body already has everything it needs to maintain itself. The systems are built in, the feedback loops are there. The immune cells, the repair mechanisms, the hormonal regulation, the neuroplasticity, all of it is already running. The question is not what you can add to make your body work. The question is what you can stop doing that is getting in the way of it working as well as it can. Chronic stress is interfering with your immune system and your gut. Poor sleep is blocking your brain's cleaning process and your memory consolidation. Inactivity is removing the signals your bones and muscles need to maintain themselves. Processed food is feeding the wrong microbiome bacteria and starving the right ones. The most powerful thing you can do for almost every system we covered today is not complicated. It is sleep, it is movement, it is food that feeds your microbiome, it is managing stress. Not because someone told you to, but because now you understand why. The more you understand your own body, the better equipped you are to take care of it. Not because knowledge gives you control, your body runs most of itself without your involvement, but because when you understand that your mood, your energy, your focus, and your resilience are biological, they become things you can support. You can feed the microbiome better. You can protect the endothelium. You can work with your sleep cycles instead of against them. You can recognize that stress is not just a feeling, it's a physical state that is changing your body chemistry, and that changing your breathing or your movement can literally change that chemistry back. You have been carrying this with you your entire life. Now you know a little more about what it is.